Texas A&M's Cassius Howell is one of the most dominant and natural pass rushers in the 2026 NFL Draft.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast. Cover your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. I'm an NFL draft analyst with Bleacher Report. That's my guy, Keith Sanchez. He's the director of scouting with the Draft Network and 2019 national champion with the LSU Tigers. And guys, as always, thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen of the day. And thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in America. It's all because of you. Cassius Howell, the SEC Defensive Player of the Year, a sack machine, natural pass rusher, all the different things you want to throw out there, accolades, they fit him. And we're going to talk about his pros. We're going to talk about the cons, and then we'll get into explaining the grade and giving you the NFL comps for him. Keith, as I always ask, man, well, first, let me put, I got to remember to do this. Let me pull up, so paint the picture for everybody and give you his measurements, for Cassius Howell and some of the numbers of what he did this past season to earn that SEC champion, the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. This is 6'2", 6'3", 248 to 250 pounds, 12 sacks, 2 QB hits, 27 pressures per PFF, and a fumble force. Keith, when you look at his game, tell the people, what's that A trait? What's that #1 trait for him?
DP, like I usually do, right? I took a break from David Bailey, but I'm going to jump back on here with Cassius Howell and give both lenses of it, right? Talk about the intangibles and tangible parts of these prospects. Intangibles, DP, I think that this guy's similar. I'll put them in the same bucket, right? I'll rank Ruben Bain a little bit higher as far as angry, right? As far as the angry meter, right? Ruben Bain is probably a 10 out of 10, but I think Cassius Howell is somewhere around an 8, right? Like, these guys play with violent temperaments. He's a high motor, high effort player. I will put him in the bucket, DP, of those players that when you have the conversation of, wait, can they help change the culture of a defense? I think he's a guy that can assist in that, right? And let's go to the Super Bowl, right? And honestly, 2 players that left the Cowboys. Michael Parsons, when he left and went to Green Bay, right? He was talking about how I finally got somewhere where all 11 guys running to the football was a thing, right? It was emphasized, which is embarrassing for the Dallas Cowboys.
Very much so.
And then let's talk about DeMarcus Tank Lawrence, right? And when he got to the Seahawks, right? When he left the Cowboys, right? And he was just like, yeah, they believe in playing hard, right? Like in playing with great effort. So Cassius Howell, I believe, is one of those guys that you don't have to worry about that, right? He's going to play with a violent temperament. I go back to the LSU game, DP, and I forgot what the pregame situation was, right? Or if it happened early on in the game. But remember, there was the one play where LSU had the football, and Cassius Howell was basically, I don't even think he was fully lined up just because he was yelling at the offensive tackle, right? Like pre-snap, whatever he was telling him, right? But he was yelling at the offensive tackle in the intimidation factor, and he went on to have a pretty good game against LSU. I'm just buying into that violent temperament that he has. The physical part, DP, is the power, right? To me, I think when he's in sync and in line, there's first step explosiveness that he can convert speed to power, which can overwhelm offensive tackles. So that, to me, that's the 2 A traits.
Okay, no, I'm with that, Keith. And I think, oh man, for me, when I looked at the A traits, I think I said it about David Bailey, but it fits so much more for Cassius Howell. This is arguably, I think, when I look at just the pass rushers in this class, it's him and Akeem Mesidor at the top for me as natural, just thoroughbred pass rushers, like just natural pass rushers. Cassius Howell is a multifaceted guy. Like, he has multiple ways to win. Hand usage, speed. He's got the best feint or ghost punch into the dip and bend. He's got the, like we talk about, that kind of 90-degree angle, the ankle flexion, how that was not there for David Bailey. Oh, it's there for Cassius Howell. He could drop those hips and work right around those offensive tackles, man. And I love watching him rush the passer. And then he gives you, he's got a cross chop, he's got an inside spin move. This is a guy that also, similar to David Bailey, knows when to time up that speed, the power rush, that conversion to strike with the long arm in the chest and get you, especially if you're off balance. Same thing. Timeliness, that processing mid-step and mid-rep as a pass rusher. Both of those guys does that very well. Keith, I'm going to tell you what I really love about him as a pass rusher. Patience and tempo. He goes from 0 to 60 with such suddenness where you will see him kind of, it's almost like a basketball player with the ball in his hands, and he just kind of slow dribbles you until he's ready to work past you. And like you'll see him go like a little inside out, the little rocker step and everything like that to get a tackle to move his feet, and then he dips around the end. And he's just so fluid and so smooth as a pass rusher. Well, you just look at Cassius Howell and it's like, man, if you can't get hands on, he's in the backfield, and he's in the backfield consistently. If you cannot get hands on him, and he just makes you, it's cat and mouse. He's a cat and mouse type. Age myself a little bit. For those who remember Tom and Jerry, right? Tom and Jerry. Listen, the mouse always won. All right, the mouse always won. The cat tried everything he could, but he could never get the mouse, man. Not for long. So he's in that situation where it's just a cat and mouse game. When I look at Cassius Howell, and he just knows how to win that matchup 9 times out of 10. And he's a guy that to me, when you're talking about third downs, his value is going to be sky high for teams. Like that third down, what do I always say? I need a bucket getter. Like I need you on third down to cash in, get that quarterback to the ground, get back there, force an errant throw, give our secondary the ability to make a play on the ball. Cassius Howell brings a lot of that.
Yeah, he does. And I think that his pass rush, I'm glad you went there. It's a lot more nuanced than what people would think, right? Because it's
not just speed, guys. It's not just speed.
Yeah, you said he was 250 something pounds, right?
48, 250 somewhere.
Yeah, about 250. And especially if you look at him, right, filled out frame, right? And I think people would think that most of his production would be via just power, right? But he understands angles, right? And I thought that he always had a plan. Or let me say always, but most times he had a plan, right? Like he understands, okay, attack edges, right? Because there's so many times we see power rushing, and there are guys in this class that we can get to where it's like their plan is to run through the offensive attack, and I'm like, that's not right? Like, don't do that. Like that won't work. He's 100 pounds bigger than you, right? So
right.
But with him, he understands the attack angles, and also I thought with the footwork, right? And I'm not talking about his footwork. I'm talking about the footwork of the offensive tackle. He timed that speed to power, like you talked about, right? Is once he has that offensive tackle leaning backwards a little bit, right? And then also has their kind of their feet, right? He catches them kind of in between mid step, and then he's able to work that power, that long arm, and be able to collapse the backfield. I just love the fact that his physical prowess, right? Like it impacts the game. And I want to talk about the run game too, because I thought that there were certain elements in the run game where he uses his physicality, right, to set the edge and be able to do different things in the run game also. So looking at Cassius Howell, I think there's a clear defined floor for this young man, right? And to say that, okay, hasn't been a lot of production. I think we also have to talk about his time at Texas A&M, right? It wasn't that he was the full-time starter his entire career. He transferred, and then I want to believe in 2024 he was a rotational guy, right? Because he sat behind Nick Scourton and Shamar Stewart,
he was a backup.
And Shamar Turner and the host of guys that they had for that Texas A&M defensive line.
No, 100%. I think to your point with the run game, I think he's a guy that you want from a defensive coordinator standpoint. I kind of want him on the strong side where the tight end is. Like he's hard. It's difficult for tight ends to block him. Number one, because of the fact of just his play style, like you said, the mentality. He's an angry, physical, aggressive dude, and he plays the run like that in a sense, right? Even against tackles, you'll see him long arm and try to keep them at bay and play with strength and hold them at the point of attack, and that holds up so much better. And he's even able to shed tight ends so much easier because it's not the weight and height difference and all that. It's not much in the tight end's favor most times than not. So he's really good against the tight ends. And also a very underrated part of his game too, Keith. He's athletic enough to drop into coverage. So you're talking about running some fire zone overload blitz from one side of the formation and then dropping that guy off in that curl or flat situation. That's Cassius Howell. He's a good spot dropper off in zone, or even dropping the back in kind of that middle hook defender off of the edge. He does that well also.
Yep, I agree 100% with DP. You know what we do, man. We talk the pros. Let's flip over to the cons, right? What are some of the concerns that we have for Texas A&M edge rusher Cassius Howell? We'll discuss that coming up next.
If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs, put your post at the top of the page, and it helps you reach the right candidates faster. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. Breaking down the concerns, the cons for Texas A&M pass rusher Cassius Howell. That's what we're getting into next. But thanks for being an everydayer with us. And if you want the show ad-free, go check out the Everydayer Club and consider becoming a member. Go to LockedOnNFLDraft.supercast.com. Cassius Howell, again, listed at 6'2", 248, 250. The first thing, I think the biggest and glaring thing is arm length for him. And that's going to be the talk of the combine if he decides to measure and be a full participant, is that you could see that there's a deficiency on tape with the arm length. Like because we talk about the long arm, it's like that's kind of oxymoron since he has shorter arms, but he uses the long arm anyway. But I think for him, the thing for him is I want to see how short are they? There's a lot of numbers. I've seen a lot of people like guess and try to eyeball it. I'm like, no, I want to get the verified measurements. I think the arm length for him is going to be a big thing for NFL teams and how they value him. Because in the NFL now, what you're seeing more run game and teams willing to run at these pass rushers. The defensive fronts are downsized and smaller. You got a lot of more bigger safeties playing linebacker than the 250 Brandon Spikes and Dante Hightowers and Vontaze Burficts that we're used to seeing at 240, 250. We got more 225s, 230, 235 linebackers. Teams are running the football. And I think with him, against tackles, I have concerns with him as a run defender because now he initially set a hard edge. Like you watch him against Markel Bell, and you see him use that long arm to kind of keep space of separation. But typically with him, he doesn't disengage after he does that. And he'd pick a side, so it's like, hey, he'll pick a leverage. I'm either playing outside leverage or I'm playing inside leverage. And as a running back, that's easy to work around unless your linebackers are filling. Because as a running back, if you set too hard outside, Markel Bell is 6'8", 360, and he covers you up, and that's basically a seal block. Unless you detach, disengage, and work back and tackle me. So as a running back, I'm cutting right off that block, right up the C gap or whatever the case may be. I'm cutting right off his hip. He's got to get better, in my opinion, disengaging from blocks in the run game. I think if he does that, that'll help raise his floor as a run defender.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, DP. And you talked run game. I'm going to talk his pass rushing, right? Because we talked about it. But one thing I noted, and I put consistently in my notes, was working counter moves. I thought at the snap, when aligned, right? Like when we're talking about ready, set, go. And we talked about it. Does he have a plan? Yup, he has a plan. I think he needs to develop more in depth and trigger it quicker, his counter moves, because his initial move, if it doesn't win, I think the counter path is usually there because he's so difficult to block because he is a combination of speed and power, right? That
Yeah.
the offensive lineman, whatever they commit to, they have to fully commit to, right? And if it's an outside arc, they have to fully commit. I think there are times where he can redirect, right? How we kind of talked about the David Bayless, right? Redirect, spin move inside, or even, cross face, right? Like we talked about, like the kind of little hezzy move, cross face, go back inside. So just getting more, I think, to that outside to inside track as a pass rusher, I think could unlock another level for him as a pass rusher.
No, I like that. I like that in general, Keith. I think because at the end of the day, being able to similar to David Bailey, being able to set these guys up with that first step quickness, that first step explosiveness, that dip and bend around. He's so good about being able to get underneath the punches and hands of tackles and work around those guys. Once you start really being consistent with that inside counter, that cross face maneuver, things of that nature, like he flashes it, but it's just not. I don't see it consistently game to game.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to force these guys to vertical set, a jump set, they're going to detach. You're going to force them to detach themselves from their bumper, from that guard. And if you do that, Euro step, double hand swipe, clear. The phrase is clear the hands, clear the man. If you get past his hands and you work cross face, you're right in the face of the quarterback, right? And I think that's going to be a big thing for him in that regard, is just, being consistent to where you're not just that one trick pony. Like, the only way he's going to get past or get to the quarterback is if he runs around me or dips around me. Can you work through a guy and can try to get that speed to power? That's why I want, like, the arm length is going to be big too. Cause like you think from a boxing standpoint, right? Like shorter arm boxers, they want to get to the body, right? I want to get away from your reach. I want to get inside the reach. I want to get to your body. Well, in the NFL, I mean, not just in the NFL, but it's in football period. When you look at these tackles now, you're seeing a wide hand carriage. So, and some of the ones, like, you're going to play into their hands in the sense, no pun intended. You're going to play into their hands, like, because then when you get too close to their frame, then they clap their hands onto your shoulder pads. They get to lock out and they get to drop their anchor. And now they're big. They're 6'5", 330. They're more powerful than you. They can then stall that rep. And and that happens at times. I saw Markel Bell get him with that a few times where he tried to power through Markel. And again, Markel 6'8", 6'9", like 360. He got a little bit of like pushing, like a little whiplash. Markel dropped that anchor and the rep was over. You know what I mean? It's like, if you can't power through some of these guys, it might limit your ceiling as a player, as a defensive prospect in the NFL. You got to have more ways. And that's what I said, like that inside, to your point, the inside counters and things of that nature, it's going to be so prevalent for him, because if you can't power through a guy, you got to be able to stretch them laterally. And whether it's outside, force them to go outside and then, I work back inside, or even stretch them with, I'm going to attack inside and try to jump and try. I remember, not an edge rusher, but a linebacker, for those who remember him before his career ended tragically, it was Ryan Shazier, was a linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers and everything. And he was, as a linebacker, he shot gaps all the time. This was one of the most, like, I'm not gonna lie, he was very undisciplined. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this dude was undisciplined. He just hit a gap. He didn't care. He's like, I'm getting in the backfield, right? Bull in the China shop. But he was so explosive that it worked all the time. It worked more times than it didn't work. But when you're able to shoot gaps, then that sets up the outside spin counter. To your point, like having those that spin counter in his bag is going to be big. So if he can't work through a guy's chest, you got to find multiple ways to work around the guy.
Yep. No, I agree with that 100%. DP, let's do this, man. It's time to unveil the draft grade. What are the draft grades that we gave Texas A&M edge rusher Cassius Howell? And we're going to give you an NFL draft comp. We'll do that coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The winter games are officially here. And if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the winter games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports that you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. The drama of curling matches that start slow and somehow get intense fast. Speed, skating races decided by inches, hockey games that feel different right from the opening face-off, even niche events become must-watch when you fully lock into the competition. And FanDuel keeps the Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot, for being our everydayers, explaining the grade and dropping the NFL comps for Texas A&M star pass rusher Cassius Howell. Keith, what grade do you have on them, and then what comps have come to mind for you?
Yep. So for Cassius Howell, draft grade wise, I went 86. I went 86 with him, supplanting him in the first round. I think I like what I've seen enough, right? I think he's a good football player, solid football player. The part that I'm more excited to get into is the couple comps that I have. And there's two mainly. One, I went with Kayvon Thibodeaux. And then two, I went with Bradley Chubb. Let me explain both, right? Because comps, I told you, it can be interesting, like, there's different dynamics that go into a comp, right? And so for the Kayvon Thibodeaux part, I think they're very similar from a height weight perspective. And Kayvon coming out, Kayvon was a huge name. So people have to understand something, that the conversation surrounding prospects with the hype of a prospect, right, doesn't necessarily always match the skill set, right? And Kayvon Thibodeaux, former 5-star, number 1 rated prospect. He was almost Caleb Williams of edge rushers, right? As far as the celebrity status that was applied to him. So I'm not saying that Cassius Howell has reached that celebrity status, right? Or in that arena. But if I wrote down the pros and cons, I think it's very similar, right? Because Kayvon was another guy that had to add stuff to his pass rush repertoire, right? And even at Oregon, we talked about how he would play the run more than he would play the pass, right? Like the pass rushing part, but there was physical tools there, and he was a naturally strong guy with great functional strength and functional power. And I think you've seen that in his NFL career. I think this past year, I think he got injured, and then the year before was his first year with double-digit sacks, right? So reason I put that, Bradley Chubb, and I think I like this one more, right? And Bradley Chubb, from a statistics standpoint, is a guy that has had an up and down career, but that's been due to injury, right? And I believe it's been every year but one. Every year that he's played at least 16 games, he's been a double-digit sack guy, right? And I'm going to look at their height weight, right? 6'4", 260, 268. Bradley Chubb is listed at, right? But I look at his career overview, and like I said, it's let me get it right. So yeah, in 2018, he had 12 sacks, right? And I believe that was his rookie year. Then he only played 4 games, so he only had 1 sack. But then 2020 was only 14 games, but he had 7.5 sacks. Go back to another 16 games played. He had 8 sacks. 2023, he played 16 games. He had 11 sacks. And this past year, he played 17 games and had 8.5 sacks. So I think, to me, that's a good arena to where he can fall at, right? And I think that's a good overall comp as far, because Bradley Chubb has, some quickness to him, power, things like that. And I think that Cassius Howell has the goods to be a consistent double-digit sack guy. And Bradley Chubb, I feel like, would hit that threshold. I think just half of his, honestly, career, he hasn't touched 10 games because of injury.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Definitely, those are two interesting names, Keith. I'm gonna bring up one. He was drafted. What year was he drafted? It's recent too. 2024, actually. And I go with Chop Robinson from Penn State. Similar bills. Chop, listen, 6'3", 255. And remember, Chop went and lit up the combine, right? Like a 4.44 in the 40, things of that nature. Chop came in with 32. He came with 32.5-inch arms. And I think the way that they play, both are bendy rushers, explosive first step. I think Chop won to me with more just pure speed and athleticism, where, like we talked about earlier, when it came down to Cassius, he wins with more nuance and understanding and leveraging, and just, hey, I know how to set you up. I know how to get you where I want you, and I know how to pivot off of that, right? Where Chop was first step explosiveness, work the arc, get around you. Like he was more of an athletic pass rusher than what Cassius is. Like Cassius is an athletic guy, but he doesn't use that as his only move or his go-to. He knows how to get to him. And I think for Chop, like I think it was similar things where it was arm length was questioned for him, and then it was like the run defense. And he's been with the Dolphins for 2 seasons. He's played I believe 32 games. He's only started 4 of the 32 throughout his career. He had 6 sacks in 2024 and then 4 sacks in 2025 and everything. A guy that can, again, even in they use him as a DPR, in 2024, over 300, almost 330 just pure pass rush snaps with 56 pressures. For a guy that's not starting, that lets you know he's a DPR for him. And I think that's where I look at with Howell. Like if he comes in, I think he probably could come in around a similar arm length of that 32 and a half or 32. If he comes in around that area, and then we get to the teams, get him in the camp, see how he defends the run. How can you mitigate it? How can you maximize it? That's going to make or break whether he's starting more games in his first 2 years, or he's in that Chop Robinson plan where it's like, you know what? At worst, you're our DPR. We keep your legs fresh. You come in and you're a constant contributor on the as a pass rusher. In terms of grades, I just realized I didn't give a grade.
Yeah, that's how I was like, wait, did I miss the grade?
No, you didn't. I have him as a 8.0. For us, that's a late first, early second. We call it a year 1 starter, a guy that you can expect to start in his first year. And I think that just going back to main thing for him is like arm length. And then how are you going to defend the run? How can we maximize your ability to defend the run at the next level to determine how many snaps you're going to be able to play? I think it's almost, remember when we was at the Draft Network, that conversation we had as a group about Jordan Davis when he came out and people were like, how many snaps is he going to play? Because he's more of a run defender than a pass rusher. I think it's reverse. It's how many snaps is Cassius Howell going to play? Because he's he's a better pass rusher than he is run defender. But if we can get that to you being just a net neutral run defender where you're not negative, we can work with that. We can work with that on first and second downs.
Real quick, do you think he's scheme versatile, meaning he can be a 3-4 outside linebacker? Yes. Or he can be a hand in the ground 4-3 defensive end?
I think he's going to be, to me, he's more of a 3-4 outside linebacker.
I agree.
But then that allows me to be able to drop him off in coverage. And then I think with his athleticism too, because
I wanted to ask you that about David Bailey. I wanted to see how you felt.
Oh yeah, no, same thing. I feel him more as I feel David Bailey is more of a 3-4 outside backer. Like I said, you get him a little wider alignment and you put his hand in the dirt and let him rush. But I think both of these guys are much better standing up and allowing them to get off the ball with immense quickness. And again, I think even like with Howell, if you're facing or you have an athletic quarterback in your division, I think he also gives you a little bit of QB spy where he could drop off into the shallow realm, the shallow waters. Quarterback doesn't notice it, and he's spying that quarterback and able to work because he's got really good closing bursts to the football.
Yep. I agree with DP. That wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Coming up on Monday, guys, I think it's time to talk about little Arvell Reese, a guy that I've seen in top 2 in a lot of mock drafts, to the New York Jets and everything. And we dropped the mock draft over at Bleach Report that I've talked about this week. And Arvell Reese was not the second overall pick for us. So it's like we got to have that. We kind of got to go through his. We need to go through his film, Keith, and talk about the pros, the cons, and really dive into a guy that probably has less than 200 pass rush snaps on the season. We're going to break down Arvell Reese's tape and his game and his profile on Monday's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.